Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to yet another episode of Little Modular. Today we will make friends with this little bugger right there, FLEXSHAPER by KLAVIS. This one was kind of unexpected, no hype around it really. Eric from KLAVIS sent it to me about a week ago. To be honest, I wasn't too impressed at first, but probably that's because I did not understand what this module does, because it could be hard at the beginning to grasp the concept, but it's really easy, especially when you look at the oscilloscope and when you look at the wave and what happens to it. But once you grasp the concept, it's really apparent how useful and deep this module can be. It's inspired by Oberheim matrix modulation section, where you had this tracking generator module. It was inserted between the modulation source and destination and allowed you to shape the modulation signal itself. It had the same concept of 4 ranges and 5 parameters, but where KLAVIS offering differs is that you can modulate each of those parameters, and it works also great in the audio range. Alright, but what is it? So the concept is simple. You insert a CV signal or audio signal in here, and then it is divided into 4 ranges that you can manipulate freely with those knobs. So it's really easy to understand it if you imagine that the signal is represented by a full knob twist, and then this knob is divided into 4 ranges. So this knob right here represents the lowest value, the floor. So we can manipulate the minimal voltage with this knob. So the first range is from the floor, from the bottom, to the mid down, right here. Okay? And you can see the default setting dot right there. The second range is from the mid down to the halfway. So again, halfway, the default setting with the dot at noon. And then we have the third range from halfway to mid up with the default setting right here. And then we have the ceiling. So with this, you're deciding about the upper limit of signal. You can have unipolar or bipolar signals processed with it. So if you want to process LFOs or audio signals, you would switch to bipolar. Envelopes, for instance, you would go for unipolar. You also have simultaneous unipolar and bipolar out for this module. You also have the gain pot, where you can set the right gain, and you can also clip the signal in a very precise and controlled way. Doesn't sound like much, right? But let me show you what it can do. So let's start with the super simple patch. I'm connecting a triangle wave from my Rubicon, and let's start with adjusting the gain. So if this LED here goes red, it means that you're clipping the signal, which might be what you want. That's a bit much. This seems like a good compromise. So when we set all of the parameters to the dot markings, the signal is replicated. So it means that it's not affected in any way by the module. Now I have to choose which output I want to use. I want to use the bipolar because this is the oscillator. So as you can see, it's a triangle wave, nothing much. But now I can change, for instance, the floor. So I can change the minimal CV and transform the wave. So can you see it? I could round the peaks at the bottom. I could do the same thing with the ceiling. So I can round, I could change the default. Okay? And at this point I have transformed the triangle into the sine wave. I could also clip it furthermore and make it more like a square. Okay? But that's just the beginning, just the basic shaping. I can also manipulate the other parts of this wave. What if I change the mid down? Can you see it? I'm just changing the shape in other part of the wave, both ways. Okay, like so. So it's a really flexible wave shaper. I can now change the halfway. So as you can hear, we can have some really dramatic wave shaping done with that. Let's manipulate the mid up just with manual tweaking. What if we set all of the parameters in the maximum, minimum, maximum, minimum, maximum fashion? We will get another set of triangles. Check it out. Maximum, minimum, maximum, minimum, and maximum. Okay? So we have another set of perfectly shaped triangles. Different sound. We have our triangle at the default settings again, and I would like to make it octave higher, double the frequency. So I would take the ceiling to the minimum, then I'll set the mid knobs to the half position and the halfway to the max, and we have an octave higher, double the frequency. So for now we have been changing the settings manually, and even just with that, as you can hear, you can have lots and lots of different sound variations. I mean lots. Okay, the clipping does some really nice stuff to the sound. So it's like a wave shaper on steroids. But where the fun really begins is when you start modulating those ins, because each of these parameters can be modulated at CV rate and at audio rate. So for instance, if I take a patch cord and just use my trusty quad LFO by Modcon, okay, then I can take another LFO and patch to other. Alright? Of course, we won't stop here. Let's take another LFO. You know what I mean? Let's clip it. Okay? We can of course offset the modulation. Let's change it maybe. But that's only half of the story, because it's even more fun if you modulate it with audio rate signal, like so. I have a DPO connected to this. Can you hear that? It's crazy how cool that is. It's almost like a filter. It talks to me. Nice. Let's connect something else. It's just some wave from Dixie oscillator. Let's speed it up. And we can still modulate some of them with an LFO, like so. Okay? Man, so many sounds to be found here. I'm loving the clipping portion of it. It really sounds great. So as you can see, it actually allows you to have a sort of complex oscillator out of normal oscillators. So if you just have some plain vanilla simple oscillators, just connect one of them to the FLEXSHAPER and modulate heck out of it with another oscillator connecting to any of the ins or all of them, as you have seen it. And just that gives you an immense amount of fun. But that's just the half of the story. Of course, all of the things I have shown you here for the oscillators could be implemented for the LFOs, because these are also bipolar signals. So you can have some extremely complex LFOs with that as well. Okay, so here we have a different scenario, because as I mentioned, we can use that with the oscillators, LFOs, but also with unipolar sources. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to be in the unipolar mode. So if this is not lit, it's unipolar. And I'm also taking the signal out of the unipolar out. What I have done here, I have connected the first envelope from Quad-G, which is working in the cycle mode, so it's cycling all the time. I'm connecting this to the input. I'm triggering the Mix 3 mixer, VCA, which is fed with banked oscillator. And this is how it sounds when I increase the gain. Nothing special, just a normal envelope. Let's set up the pots in the default position. So right now the signal is not affected. As you can see, the green LED lights up, meaning that I'm in the optimal range. And what happens if I start to change the minimum, maximum, and those different ranges? Let's start with the ceiling, shall we? Look at the shape. Okay, so the envelope is changing rather drastically, allowing for some really cool shapes. Okay, let's check out what will happen if I'll adjust the floor, so the minimum setting. As you would expect, we're lifting the minimum response, so the VCA is more and more open because we're losing the initial 0. Nonetheless, it's quite an interesting venture. Can you see those weird spikes and weird shapes? As previously with the audio signals, it benefits from modulating as well. So you can modulate any of these like so and see what'll happen. Okay, so we have those moving, morphing envelopes that won't be static. They'll change every time any of these knobs is modulated. So you can get some really crazy, unpredictable shapes with it. So any envelope generator will benefit from it. It will just extend possibilities of it. So it works with any kind of envelope generator and actually any kind of signal for that matter. And of course, you can still modulate that at the audio rate and see what happens. I have no clue, to be honest. Let's see what happens. That is really cool. Haven't seen a shape like that on any oscilloscope before. Oh my god. That is so cool. Let's change the frequency on my DPO. If we go to the lower range, almost LFO, behaves differently. So we have those short envelopes, but what about classical envelopes? As you can see here, a typical envelope shape a bit longer attack and release, and I have all the knobs at the default settings. Let's tweak this. We have a double peak. Some really unusual shapes. I think that's the EEG of my heart. Now we can even try to modulate it with a different envelope. I have a contour 1 down below. You can't see it off screen. Let's see what that does. Yep, that's nice. I like that one. There's one more example that I find really cool with the FLEXSHAPER, and that is altering some sequencer melodies, altering the CV information for volt per octave inputs. What I have here is a simple patch bang oscillator, as previously, connected to mix 3, which is triggered by a second envelope from the Quad-AG. The Quad-AG is driven by the gate out from Metropolis, and Metropolis is also submitting the pitch information, which goes to the FLEXSHAPER, and then it goes to bang volt per octave in. So if I open the VCA, you can hear the pattern. Simple, nice pattern. Now if I change different parameters here, I can adjust melody in different ways and create some nice variations of it. It's okay, so it's almost like additional sequencer, and again you can modulate it with different sources. Of course, for better results, and if you want to stay in the given harmony, you would use a quantizer at the output. So as you can see, a small module which does not look like much, but it can inject so much life in any patch. Again, use it with sound generators as an advanced wave shaper, distortion unit. Use it with your LFOs to create different complicated shapes. Use it with your envelopes to create some unusual shapes. Use it with anything you can patch into it and modulate it. Super deep and fun module. Do not sleep on it. Thanks a lot for staying with me. If you liked that video, if you found it useful, please subscribe and spread the good word. Bye bye. Take care. I'll see you next time.